Now I can't. I'll say it again. Well, and welcome, Warren James. Do I pronounce it right?
That's correct. Yeah, Warren James. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm Ingrid Nilsson, and I'm from Sweden. And you are from England?
I'm from England. I live in a city called Coventry in the middle of the UK.
Yeah. And I was looking out on the internet, and then I saw your name, and I found you very interesting
Ah, well, that's it's nice to be found interesting.
in a spiritual way. Because I thought your Facebook, you have your trance medium.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, yeah. So then I saw you interview, or you bring through some spirits, don't you?
Yeah, we have a spirit team of probably about 5 people, regular communicators who've communicated with my circle for going back 10 years, but certainly more so in the last several years. Yes.
Yeah. So I would like you to speak about the Blue Circle and how it all begun and what it is.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
the Blue Circle, we named the Blue Circle in 2016. But prior to that, to go right back to the beginning, the circle was formed with myself and my circle leader, now circle leader Paul. I live at Paul's home, which is where I am now. I rent a room here, and we both shared an interest in the subject of spiritualism and mediumship and all of its associated phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2008 or 2009, I think it was 2008, we decided to start sitting one evening each week,
Mm-hmm.
to try and primarily get contact with the spirit world. We wanted to know if, we wanted it to be a reality that we could experience,
Mm-hmm.
and also we wanted to try and develop physical communication with the spirit world, so physical mediumship.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in 2008, and that's when it started. Just the two of us, sat in the lounge of the house, um, and I used to set about each week blacking the room out, blocking all the windows to try and eliminate the light in the room, because we understood those were the conditions required for physical mediumship. And that's when it started, 2008. And
Mm-hmm.
in at
Did
that
you have
period,
to have, sorry, did it take long time or?
well, to black the windows out or to make them.
No, 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 no. But to get the contact or the connection.
Yes, yes, it did. It took a long time. Uh, Probably 18 months to 2 years we sat, and
Mm,
in that 18 months to 2 years, there was very little, if anything, that you would consider to be communication. There simply wasn't any
mm,
for that whole period, and that eventually did change, but for a long time there wasn't. So it did take a long time. Although I do know of mediums who sat for several years before they made contact. So
mm,
compared to those people, perhaps it was rapid compared to them, but
mm.
2 years is a long time to be sitting
Yeah.
sitting in the dark talking to yourself for 2 years.
But when did it start then? Did you get, was it noises or what?
Well, yes, we actually did get some peculiar noises a couple of times. There was a sound that came from the near the ceiling, which
Mm,
sounded like static electricity kind of sound, and we both heard it. It was very evident in the room. But that it truly commenced when friends of ours, who one of them was a trance medium and the other was her circle leader, and we knew them very well. And they both came here one evening when they found out we'd started sitting, and they came to encourage us and they came to support us. And in that evening, the trance medium, the lady, went into trance. She dropped into trance quite unexpectedly, and
mm,
suddenly a voice was speaking to us and instructing us and advising us on our own gatherings.
mm,
And that voice identified himself by the name of Monty. And advised us he would communicate with our circle. And just as he was going, he happened to whisper across the room to Paul. I said, that's good, but he hasn't said who the medium's going to be, because neither of us had any idea. I had no intentions on being a medium, no intentions at all. I assumed that my friend Paul, who'd had more mediumistic experiences than I'd had, I thought he'd be him, but Monty then very quickly came back and said, no, it'll be you, Warren. So it'll be Warren who'll be the medium. So that was a surprise, you know. And probably around, I can't say exactly how long later, not long later, a person who sat with that lady's circle had strong connections with a local spiritualist church, and he had a great interest in trance mediumship. And he said to Paul, he said, you might be interested to know that we're having a trance workshop at the church, and perhaps yourself and Warren might like to come along. And, you know, we said, well, that's great, we'll go. So, as I recall it, one very cold morning, we arrived at the church with our packed lunch, and we sat there for the day, and it was an interesting experience because I'd never seen anybody do trance mediumship, and I was in a room of probably maybe 8 ladies. There were 8 ladies and three guys, myself, Paul, and John, the chap who led the group that afternoon. And there was a cabinet, a spirit cabinet set up. You'll understand what a spirit cabinet is. And we sat within that. I never understood why we sat in it, but we did. And we took turns. And my experience was I must be totally honest. My experience wasn't particularly. I didn't really enjoy the day, if I'm honest.
No.
I saw each of these ladies go into the cabinet and sit, and everybody's watching, and I'm seeing everybody around me saying, "Can you see a moustache appearing?" or "Can you see this?" or "Can you?" And I couldn't. And I turned to my friend Paul. "Can you see a moustache?" And he said, "No." And I thought, "No, I can't see one either." You know, so people were seeing things that I couldn't see, and then people would speak very eloquently about things, but I didn't believe it. I didn't believe what I was seeing. I'd read a book called On the Edge of the Etheric by Arthur Finlay, and what I'd read in that book was not what I was seeing happen. So I was a bit disillusioned, and I was invited then to go and sit within the cabinet, and I had no idea what to do. So I sat and waited, and nothing happened. I didn't feel anything. I didn't sense anything. Nothing happened at all. And this continued through the day. We had lunch, and then we did it again in the afternoon. And again, I sat in the cabinet, and nothing happened. And I felt nothing. But at the end of the day, or towards the end of the day, there was about half an hour left, and it was decided that they had time for one more person to go and sit in the cabinet. So it was, who would you like to go in? And then I think it was because I was the youngest, because I would have only been maybe 24. Everyone was much older than me, you know. And all these ladies, I think, decided, oh, send Warren in again. He'll enjoy it, you know. And I thought, you know. So I sat within the cabinet again, and I can hear them whispering, "Can you see this? Can you see that?" And the gentleman who was running the event just happened to say, "Warren, would it be easier if everybody stayed quiet and didn't describe the thing?" I said, "Yeah, it might do." And truthfully, I only said that because I was getting fed up of hearing it, and I could hear it. So I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And then something happened, unexpected, out of the blue, without any warning. Something happened, and I can only describe it as a weight on my mind, like a weight pressed down. I felt heavy, Suddenly I felt tingles running down into my hands and into my fingers, which were resting on the arms of the chair. These tingles started to go down my hands and fingers. And then suddenly I started to feel my fingers starting to sort of cross or go, and my hands lifted just a few inches off the arms of the chair. And then I felt this push from my throat. And suddenly a voice spoke past me. I heard it. I could hear every word, but it was involuntary. It pushed forward, and it was very unnerving, and spoke very, very briefly, a few words, really, a sentence or two. Spoke to Paul, my friend Paul, and just as he went, he said, "It's Monty." The same voice that had spoken through the lady just a few weeks or a few months earlier. And that was the first occasion that it happened in the Spiritualist Church in Coventry during a kind of workshop, a private workshop, and unexpected because nothing had happened at all the two previous times that day.
But when you went to this workshop, does it help, or you must have this gift, or?
Well, I mean, I believe in my earlier life as a little boy that I did come out with some things that made my mum wonder, where did that come from? Things he's saying, but I had no awareness of any ability or mediumship ability in my life up until that point. Nothing as strong as that had ever happened, really. And as I say, it was very unnerving. I didn't particularly like it. I wanted to go home straight away because what happened was once the words were spoken, all of those sensations on my body went in reverse. The tingling backed off. My mind became less heavy, even though I'd heard it all. And at that moment, I just wanted to go home. I wanted to get out of here,
Were you afraid, or were you a bit afraid, or were you afraid?
Well, apprehensive is certainly the correct word to use. Nervous, unnerved would be the right word, I think. Yeah.
I've seen these cabinets, as you say, on Surviving Death. They tie them in this box, like.
Yes, that's right. Well, with physical mediumship, they use I don't believe a cabinet is required for trance mediumship. In fact, I know it's not required for trance mediumship. It's very It's not necessary at all. A cabinet is predominantly required for physical mediumship. When they put the medium within the cabinet, in their chair, and they secure them and bind them to the chair, usually at the wrists and the legs. Because the cabinet will then have a curtain closed in front of it, and it's an isolated booth, if you like, for the medium, so that the spirit world can condense the energy within a separate area. But of course, they have to secure the medium to the chair for a number of reasons. But one of the main reasons, of course, is to ensure that the medium isn't out of their chair under the cover of darkness of the seance room and moving things around, because this is physical phenomenon, so you should all be able to see it happening. And what you don't want is a medium out of their chair being fraudulent, which has happened many times in history, of course. Well, they weren't mediums, of course, but they were fraudulent all the same. So it's a safeguard to ensure, and that's the purpose for securing them. But the cabinet purpose is to condense the energy around the medium, to keep it all in one small area.
Yeah. And this Monty, do I pronounce it right? Monty. Who is he?
Well, it's a very good question. Very good question. Who he is, we don't truly know fully. We know some of his identity, but not a lot. He's never been too keen on being over forthcoming with his identity. We know he worked within, we knew he was an academic. We knew he worked within the sciences, predominantly medicine, during his time on Earth. From what he's told us about himself, he was a skeptic, very much a skeptic. He told us that he sat with physical mediums. He's told us that during his life on Earth, he experienced full materialization of spirit people within the seance room and within the light, and he felt it was fraudulent, and he didn't believe any of it. So we assume he must have been slightly closed-minded in his views, and we think he must have lived between in the late 1800s, you know. But that's truly about all we know of him, and we know that his purpose for doing what he's doing now, by and large, is to correct his ignorance. He's taken up on, he's interested in the subject. He's aware that it is now a reality. Now he's transitioned over, and the only other thing we knew is that he'd waited a very long time to work with me. So he'd been very patient in waiting. But as far as his life is concerned, and he's never been forthcoming, and he's never wanted to discuss it. He doesn't want it to spoil the work that we're trying to achieve. You know, he doesn't want that to become the prominent subject. We've always respected that. That's some of his identity, at least. That's about as much as we know.
I have listened to some recordings, but what is it he usually speaks of? What does he come with? Yeah.
Well, what he tends to talk about, and amazingly, I should say, I mean, people call it philosophy. I don't tend to call it philosophy because the word philosophy now gets overused a lot. Monty brings a lot of common sense, is what I would call it. He's always been very, very good at talking about global events, world events, situations that will take place around the world as a whole, people as a whole. And unlike a lot of philosophy that comes through a lot of guides and a lot of mediums, you know, it's sometimes, this is not to criticize anybody, we're all on our journey, but very often I've heard words spoken and I've thought, well, how can you ever prove that? How can we ever know it's genuinely from the spirit world? But what Monty would tend to do would be to tell us things that were about to happen in the world, and within a week, sometimes days, maybe 2 weeks, that very thing would happen in the world. It would be part of the mainstream news. So I'm very good at that. So he brings a lot of common sense, stroke philosophy, and very good at telling us of world events, very good at helping us to conduct our life and in a better way, very good at encouraging us from day one to follow our moral compass for ourselves, as opposed to what other people on Earth might tell us to do. So it's very encouraging.
Yes. And you have a different voice when he comes through, because it's an older man's voice.
He's certainly an older man. He's certainly a very different voice to my voice. He's very certainly older, which is nice. Very charming, very polite, very courteous, and the choice of his words suggests that he is a man of a different time. You know, the way he speaks and the words that he uses are certainly really not my vocabulary. So there is a different vocabulary taking place there.
I think it was when people were a little more polite.
Yes. You know, I mean, I wouldn't say he was aristocratic, obviously not, but he certainly had. He certainly, if he was involved in medicine and the sciences of medicine in the late 1800s, I suspect he would have been educated in a different manner than we are today. You know, so but he brings a great deal of humour. He has a very quite a wry sense of humour, quite a what's the word? Dry sense of humour. A nice sense. It's a nice sense of humour, that's for certain.
Yeah, I think he wants us to listen, as you said, to ourselves. Because I listened to a recording now, and it got me to think a step ahead.
Yes. That's correct. He's always been very good at. He's usually always a step ahead of us, step or two ahead. But he's always encouraging people to think for themselves, not to think, not to be told what to think. It's not. it's never true because someone says it is. It's never true because the news or the newspapers or your teacher told you it's true, so it's true. It's always follow your own moral compass. Always go with yourself. And I must say, he believes in the positive. Sometimes people have criticised some of his messages for being negative, but when challenged on that, he said, well, he did explain that it's not negative to face the truth, because if you face the truth, you make it better. It's negative to ignore the truth. I agree with that, I must admit.
I didn't find it negative because I would think TV would be negative, the news and so on.
Absolutely.
So he got me thinking about the time now around what we have in the world. So
yeah. This last 2 years, I would say, I don't know whether he would agree, but I would certainly say that this last 2 years have been his finest hour, really, because everything that has happened in this last 2 years, we have known was coming for the last 5.
Yeah.
We knew 5 years ago of a great global upheaval approaching us, and he told us, and part of his purpose has been this. So he's advised us through every step of the last 2 years. He's told us what will happen next, and it has happened every single time with astonishing accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds wonderful. And then we have Anthony, who is a young boy, isn't he?
Yeah, the adorable Anthony. Yes.
He's from a different class, isn't he? He's like more, yeah.
Totally. Very, very much, very much a character.
Yeah.
Very much a lovely lad, but very, very much in charge of evidential communication.
Mm-hmm.
When Anthony communicates, he tends to try to bring messages from loved ones, but he is from a different cloth. He is very down to earth, very much a little Cockney London boy. We with him, we had no idea how old he was, and then we found out at the time he was about 6.5, 7 years old, very young, and we didn't know what period in time he came from, and then one day we asked him, when did you live, basically. And he couldn't really tell us. He wasn't too sure, but he said, I just remember that the Crystal Palace was being built. Now, the Crystal Palace was built in 1855 in Hyde Park in London. And it was made for the Great Exhibition, which Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, had this big glass structure built in Hyde Park for this wonderful exhibition. And he remembers that being built. So that gave us a point in time where we, highlight where he was. So we reckon about 1855. He must have been certainly alive enough to remember that happening.
Was he like a poor boy? Was he poor?
Yes, it seems so. Once somebody asked him how he died, and it was a lesson to us because he got quite upset about it, and he didn't really like recalling his death. But from what we understood from the things he said and the things he has said, yes, he wouldn't have been wealthy at all. He wouldn't have had any real position in life. And he lived in London in the Camden. He tells us he remembers being in Camden, which is part of London, and he was able to tell us of pubs, London pubs, that he could remember. And out of curiosity, I went straight on the internet, and sure enough, the two areas that he said he lived, he remembered two pub in both areas. He remembered there was a pub called the Eagle. And then the family moved, and he remembers when they moved, he says that his mum said it was a good omen that they've moved here because there's another pub called the Eagle. So I went and checked the map of London and the old street of London, and sure enough, there's an Eagle pub in one place, and the other place he claimed that he lived, there's an Eagle pub there as well to this day. So he wasn't wrong.
No. And when he comes through, you speak as a child.
He does bend my vocal cords. They all do, yeah. My vocal cords seem to get pulled into, and their character is pressed upon on me. Yes.
Yeah, because I think that would be difficult to try to do if you don't speak like that.
Certainly to keep. Well, I mean, I've worked in the entertainment business my whole life, so I know people can do things like that. But the question is, how long can you maintain a character and identity for? And Anthony's been with us now for probably 6 years, Monty for 10, and their character, their vocabulary, their voices, have got stronger over the years. But their character and the way they speak has been consistent. So it's probably not so much of how long you can do it for, but for how many years could you keep a character and an identity consistent if it wasn't genuine? That's the way I see it. It's about the consistency of their character.
Because they are so totally different, those voices.
Yes.
But then you have, is it Flatfoot?
Flatfoot, yes.
Yeah. But I haven't heard him, so I don't know how he sounds.
Well, he sounds like a craggy old Indian.
Yeah. Can I find him on the internet, or?
Yes. Sometimes on some of the recordings you hear at the very, very end a short piece where I've maybe left him on the recording where he'll say, he usually says Flatfoot says bye-bye, at the very end. But he always opens the circle and closes the circle, and he always blesses the circle and blesses those as we leave. And he's a very warm, old, native sounding voice, and his purpose is to open the circle, stand by us. We always feel good when he opens the circle.
Is it like they protect did they protect the area or what?
Well, I don't know, but he has says that he'll, I've heard him say that Flatfoot will now stand tall in the doorway between the two worlds and allow us to come and speak. So I assume he plays as much a part as a facilitator as everybody else, but just less vocal. When he first started speaking, his command of the English language wasn't brilliant. Very few words, very broken. But over the years, the last 5 or 6 years, his vocabulary has improved, and what he says is more consistent, and
So they learn on the other side.
Well, I guess so. I mean, the question has been asked of them, about their life on that side, and from what I understand, they live very ordinary lives like we do. I've never been led to under any illusion that they're in any way floating on a cloud or wasting time. They learn, they live, they enjoy, they laugh, they have all the fun of the fair, so to speak. They seem to be very happy, and they conduct very, as I understand it from what I've heard down the years from my own recordings, very, very regular, happy lives, as normal as you or I would live.
I wonder if they all are friends over there.
Yes, well, that's an interesting question to ask, actually, and the answer, had you have asked me just a few weeks or months ago, I would have said, well, I suppose they must be. When we had our first circle after Christmas, we were informed by Anthony that they've had a lovely time, and they all met up and had a Christmas party themselves. So they had a gathering as friends like we would. So they did exactly what we did over Christmas, and they got together and they mixed and they socialized and they chatted and caught up and had a great deal of fun, and they exchanged presents, which interesting. So, you know, by the sounds of it, life in their world, whilst I'm 100% certain, much nicer than down here.
Yeah.
Certainly they conduct their lives not, you know, very similarly to how we would.
I've heard that it's more real there than here.
Yeah. Yeah, we've heard that too. That's been a consistent thing. One of the very common things that they've said time and time again, our world is so similar to yours, yet very different. Similar, different. And that is true. They've said it's incredibly more real, more vibrant. You know, so yes, I'd agree with that. We've heard the same.
But you have good friends now on the other side. So yeah, and you must have learned a lot.
Yes, I mean, I think as the medium in the chair and the person who sort of has to, or has over the years, gradually started to blank out of the communication and don't hear as much as I used to hear as the mediumship developed. I learn more from listening back, but of course the circle learn a hell of a lot more than I learned because they're hearing it firsthand. And yeah, without question, I've learnt a lot. A lot. I've learnt a lot as a medium, and I've learnt a lot listening back to what comes through later on when I listen back to the recordings. I've learnt a lot, yes, without question.
Because when I speak to you, it seems that you have knowledge of this area.
Yeah, well, of mediumship in general.
You know what you're speaking about. I feel that you know that.
Yeah, I don't. You know, I've sat in the presence of many people who profess to be mediums, and I've sat in the presence of some very, very, very good trance mediums and physical mediums, and I've been very blessed over the years to meet and get to know these people and to consider some of them as acquaintances and friends, you know, and I've learnt a lot from them, but I must admit I've learnt more through my own mediumship than anybody else's. The experience of the process, certainly the development process itself, is a journey in itself, and it's a very difficult journey. It's a hard journey. At least it was for me. So you know, I've learned a lot. I've had to learn and process a lot of how to deal with it psychologically and mentally, and also I've had to learn
the energies, or what do you mean?
Well, you see, when I first started developing me as a mediumship, when the trance mediumship first started to happen, it started very slowly and it was very light. So I heard every single word that was said. I could even influence what was said if my thoughts were strong. Sometimes something would be said that I didn't agree with personally. Bother me, and by me getting bothered, it would interfere with the communication. And we were always assured that that would change, that I would go, for want of a word, into it much further into the altered state where I'd be less aware of what was being said. But of course, for a long time, I could hear these things, and also I had doubts. You know, there was no evidence at first. There was about 12 months, maybe 15 months, you know, with no evidence, no evidential communication. So I spent let's say the first 2 years wondering if I had some kind of schizophrenia, double personality disorder, you know, and I would get very frustrated by that, and I would doubt myself, and that would bother me. So that in itself has been a massive learning curve, you know. It was only when evidence started to be delivered to people, information that went beyond my knowing, even though the philosophy went beyond my knowledge, in itself, at first, it wasn't evidential, of course. So I wanted evidence. I wanted proof of survival. And I also wanted proof that this was real. What was happening to me was real. You know, it was a lot of doubt at first, and that took a long time to overcome.
Yeah. And what are you I guess you still want to develop something else. Is it the physical or what?
Well, yes, we around 2 years ago, in one of our circle meetings two years ago. In fact, the January before the lockdown, so it'd be January 2020. We were all sitting in the circle, and I hadn't gone into trance. I was still very much with it, and the music was playing quietly, and we were just waiting. And I think my mind just sort of wandered off into the music. And then suddenly a little voice appeared in the room and everyone heard it.
Yeah.
So that was the first, our first and only physical phenomenon experience within our own circle. And it was very clearly Anthony's voice. We could hear it, and it was obviously his voice. And it spoke out of thin air, about 6 foot up to the right of the cabinet. And to me, it sounded like he was outside the spirit cabinet. So we knew they could do it. So around 4 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, the spirit team, our own spirit team, announced that they will now be going forward to try and develop this further. So now our circle is, having got used to sitting in a certain way for so long, now, certainly on Tuesday night just gone, I was pretty much present for most of the evening, and able to listen to the music and join in the conversation. I think I dropped into trance twice. Anthony came twice, beginning and at the end. But the rest of the time I was very much present with everybody. So it seems that physical mediumship is where they're going now. And direct voice, independent voice seems to be the direction that they're going to try and take. So if it was developed, it would be, properly, it may be a little like Leslie Flint and mediums like Leslie Flint, who, the spirit people spoke in their own voice as opposed to through his, So fingers crossed, that's where it will go.
But they need the energy, is it so?
Well, yes. We've never understood what the energy is. We've never tried to understand what energy is. We know that when we sing at the start of the circle, we sing for about 10 minutes. We've got a CD which has got some sing-along music on it, and then it goes into instrumental music. And we just follow the same CD every week, and we sing for that short period, and then we listen to the music. And we don't get overly concerned about the energies, we know that when we sing, we make energy. We know that when we're in good spirits ourselves, that the conditions are good. We know that the energy and the conditions are made by us being in a good place, and being happy to be together. Beyond that, we don't know anything else. We've never questioned it. We let them, because they're the people, the spirit people are the people who'll deal with it. So we as long as we're producing whatever it is they need, we let them get on with it.
And you enjoy it, or you enjoy doing it?
Yes, yeah. We look forward. Tuesday night is our night, and we come together as friends, and some of us have known each other for over 20 years, long before the circle existed. So we go back a long way, and we enjoy each other's company. We laugh, and we chat about things, and it's great. It's friends being together first and foremost. We know that our other friends in the unseen world are present in our company with us, which is just great. We love that.
I was thinking we can speak all night, of course, but is there? But do you work? Do you do readings for people, or do you?
No, I don't. The only thing I've done is we did do some guest circles where we let people come in. They were always friends of friends. People would always be able to vouch for them, because at that time my mediumship was very, very, very new, and and was only just starting to, if you like, open like a flower. You know, it was very. So we had people come along as guests, and that was successful. And then a friend of mine on 2 occasions, who she's a yoga teacher, and within her house she has her own yoga studio where she teaches. It's quite a large house, and she asked, would I consider doing a sitting for selected people? She would pick them. There was about 20 people there in all altogether, and that was very much a test sitting for me, you know, with these unknown people. But again, that was successful. We have had occasional guest circles where other people have come, but no, I've never gone out my way to give readings or to become a medium who delivers things on demand, or you know, not because I don't want to. I mean, I just feel that my purpose is to develop it. And I wouldn't want money to get in the way of that, and I wouldn't want expectations to get in the way of the development of what could be a wonderful thing, a truly remarkable thing, if we keep developing it and sitting for the spirit people to get it better. You know, I fear that I've seen a lot of mediums in my life on public platforms. Some of them are clairvoyant, some of them are but I often saw that many of them went to their development circles for a period of time. They reached a certain standard that they seemed happy with, and then they couldn't wait to start taking bookings and demonstrating. Whereas I'm of the other, my school of thought is different. If I give my life and sit in for my whole life, then eventually we will hopefully develop a form of communication that will be a true gift to the world, and people who, you know, will develop something that is truly astounding, that people will truly benefit from. So I would rather give. I'm not against sitting for other people. You know, I have done it, and I'm happy to do it in the right circumstances if it's to help people. But I also think there's a duty to give the spirit world the absolute utmost time. And, you know, if you sit for an hour each week, and there's 52 weeks in the year, and it's one evening a week, at the end of that year, assuming you've had no holidays, no sickness, nothing has stopped you, you've only really sat for 2 days, you know. So, you know, 52 hours a year is not an awful lot. So
no, really, but still, you
no,
do it.
absolutely, and we've done it for many years. So, you know, years ago I sat with a medium called Stuart Alexander. I don't know if you know Stuart Alexander, but here in the UK, well, actually in the world, he's probably one of the only physical mediums in this world, probably, to my knowledge, who hasn't had the finger of doubt and accusation pointed at him in any fraudulent way. And he is, I would call him, as well as a friend, I'd say he's probably my first real mentor in as far as physical mediumship is concerned. And I've sat with him, and his mediumship is phenomenal as a physical mediumship. But as a trance medium, it's phenomenal. The evidence I've seen loved ones on both sides having what just seemed like a telephone conversation between the two. And he achieved that because he sat in his home circle for over 30 years, and nobody knew he existed, you know. And I think, well, the reason his mediumship was so good and is still so good is because he did that. He gave the spirit people the time that they needed to keep developing. It didn't suddenly become about opening the diary, taking bookings, and the sitting was going to cost, you know. It was always dedicated to them. So, and I think I prefer that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it sounds lovely, and but still, I have met, you know, Elaine and Isabel, and I thought they were also lovely medium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of
And you
course.
know them both, don't you?
I know of Elaine Thorpe and
Yeah.
others, you know. So yeah, I do. And I mean, Elaine has dedicated many years to her development. You know, I've heard her speak, and I know I haven't sat with Elaine personally, but I know people who have. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, she's dedicated so much time, and her trance mediumship is splendid, you know. And I've listened, and it's lovely. Uh,
Yeah.
and this is it. I believe that the best mediums give their time to the spirit world to develop and
No.
keep developing. They don't decide to stop. You know,
No.
I'm sure Elaine continues to develop the same way as myself and others.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I've seen Lorraine. I keep calling Lorraine. Sorry, Lorraine. Elaine. I've seen Elaine speak a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it helps a lot of people.
Yes, without
Yeah.
question. Without question. No doubt about that at all.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. This is why I believe you must always. I mean, personally, I think I once heard Gordon Higginson. Gordon Higginson was probably one of the finest mediums this country ever produced in the UK, and he would certainly be up there amongst the world's finest in history.
Mm.
But Gordon Higginson said once that he doesn't believe he believes a medium should be in a circle for their entire life, and he was.
Yeah.
He never ceased or stopped sitting with his circle. And I believe that because, as you say, it's about helping people. So the
Mm.
that connection and the better developed it is, and the more time that's dedicated sitting for the development.
Mm.
Not to say we can't use our ability outwardly in between times, but the more we develop it, the better it gets, and the better it gets, the more you can help.
Mm.
Accurate that help will be, the stronger that connection will be, and the greater purpose will be achieved. You know, the purpose of mediumship will truly be recognized. That's my opinion, though. You know, some people might disagree. That's fine.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're allowed to think different.
that's right, except I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm joking. But yes, we all think differently, and we're all on different purposes. But I just feel that the more we give to the development, the better
Mm.
development, the greater our the realization of our work. And to
Mm.
me, it's common sense. But you know, it's but everybody's different. I get that. You know, I would never criticize for that. You know.
No. Well, I always want to say James first, but it's Warren James.
Yeah, apparently people in Europe say that it's because I have two Christian names, if you like, but
Huh?
together. Whereas my friends in Germany, they have a Christian name and a surname that's totally different. Their surname you wouldn't use as the first name. So I don't know
Oh,
what throws people in Europe or not. I'm not sure.
no. But if is there anything else you would like to share before we end this evening?
No, only to say that, you know, I mean, I hope what we've talked about in any way encourages people to sit and to develop and maybe form their own home circles, you know, because I strongly believe that, well, history shows that home circles were the backbone of spiritualism back in its early development, and there was certainly no better place to develop than your own home. The
Mm,
safety, the comfort, the tranquility, that your own home, if it's a good place, is always the place to develop in private, where you
yeah.
can be fully in charge of it without the rules of this world getting in the way. So you know, if we do anything, and we encourage, or if I encourage, or create trigger somebody's enthusiasm to start
Mm,
a circle of their own and sit and wait on the spirit world to come, then
yeah.
if we do that, great. And if we start getting that evidential communication and that wisdom that they can bring, then that's what it's all about. So
Mm,
I hope if anything, we achieve that, and if we achieve one person to do that, then I'm happy.
yeah. I can say me and two friends are starting with it now. We have got curtains and so on. But as I heard, you have to wait a long time.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can tell you there's the famous story of a husband and wife who sat for, let's just say for argument's sake, 12, 15 years. And they sat at a table, a small table, in their seance room for, well, at least over a decade. And they waited and they waited with their hands on the table.
So you started to talk about how this couple, and then you disappeared.
Well, there was a couple who sat for probably 10 to 15 years, many, many, many years ago, back in history. But it's well documented. They sat in their seance room for certainly over a decade, and nothing happened. Nothing. And then one night they decided that if nothing happened tonight, then that was it. They'd finished. They'd had enough. And they sat and with their hands resting on this little table, and nothing happened. And with that, the husband stood up and he said, "That's it. I've had enough of this. Finished." And she said, "Me as well." And they walked across the room to leave the room. And the table walked on its own and followed them.
The table had enough too.
The table had enough as well. So, there's 10 years of waiting. But then on the other hand, I do know of mediums in the past where that connection came rapidly, within weeks and weeks. Colin Fry, from the UK, he used to be known as Lincoln when he was a physical medium. He went under the pseudonym of Lincoln in those days, and his mediumship developed rapidly. And other mediums developed rapidly. Not all, but many did. So you have to be ready for anything and everything.
We will have to say the first meeting we have had enough.
Yes, yeah, and then all your furniture will start walking out the room. It'd be like watching Mary Poppins, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, yeah. We need patience. That's in life. We need it always.
I think if you cultivate a friendship and a good atmosphere for each other, that's what matters. I've heard all kinds of explanations down the years of how to sit, what to do, this or that, but ultimately, if you sit and you all enjoy each other's company, and if that becomes the focus on you guys having a good time, knowing that those people will be there and they will be working, and it will take time. But so in the meantime, focus on your friendship and having a nice evening in each other's company, relaxing, locking outside the troubled world we've got now. Leave that outside and just know that for an hour or so, you're in a different world for a short time, and in this different world, this is going to be our world as friends. I think if you cultivate that, you've got the foundations for everything. If you can all be happy in each other's company and enjoy it, you've got everything. And that's what we've got. Every Tuesday for the last 10 years, it's friends coming together. We love each other's company. We laugh. We've been doing it for years, and that comes so natural to us. And I think that's why they find it so easy to work with us now, because we find it easy to be amongst each other, So, yeah, that would be my advice. It's not so much about doing this or that. It's being happy and just enjoying yourself.
Yeah. Well, I will thank you for this evening.
Oh, not pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I will soon stop, but I would like you to stay just a moment afterwards.
Yeah, of course. We'll have a chat.
Well, thank you. Now I want to say James again, but it's Warren. Warren James. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice having you here.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me there.
Yeah. And bye.
Thank you very much. Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.